This blessed month of Ramadan, this blessed month of Barakat, we remind ourselves Ramadan is not the month of sleeping and eating. Ramadan is the month of Badr. Ramadan is the month of the Fath of Mecca. Ramadan is the month of Ain al-Jalut. Ramadan is the month of the great victories that Muslims got throughout their history. Not by sleeping and just thinking that by fasting I've done enough of a favor to Allah, na'udhu billah, but rather by realizing that this is the month of the Quran. This is the month where the nusrah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there for us. A month where we can push ourselves to be better than other months. A month where we can improve ourselves to be the best slaves of Allah. Those that came before us, the Salaf al-Salihin, and those that followed their righteousness from the great A'imma and Ulama and Mujahideen, and those who stood firm upon the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, upon the Aqeedah of Islam, upon the Quran and the Sunnah. They have set a beautiful precedence before us. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders in the Quran, as we began to have taqwa of Allah, what does that mean? We look at those before us to see the great examples that they set for us. My respected brothers and sisters in Islam, in this month of Ramadan, while you're fasting, while you're praying, I want to remind myself and you of one of the earlier scholars of Islam, those who stood firm to defend the lands of Islam. And this is not a Nabi, he's not a prophet, he's not a Sahabi, he's not a Tabi'i. This is a story that we find in the Kutub of Tariq. The earliest I could find was by Ibn al-Jawzi in Sifatu Safa, where he mentions about a man named Abu Qudama al-Shami. And you will find it in many books today with slight variations. But the earliest I found was Ibn al-Jawzi. The great scholar Al-Hafiz Ibn al-Jawzi mentions this. And he says that at a time when the Muslims were being attacked, at a time when the Muslim lands were prey to the predators of the kuffar, who were killing the innocent, raping the women, murdering the elderly, committing such heinous crimes, from the people that stood up and dedicated their life to defending Islam was Abu Qudama al-Shami. Abu Qudama al-Shami himself says that one time I was in a place which was at that time in Iraq, Riqqa, and he said I started to call the people to defend Islam, to defend the lands of Islam, and I didn't get a very enthusiastic response. He says the next day we were going to set out to face the enemy, to stop them from killing the innocent, from their war crimes. He said at that time I spent the night in that town, and I got a room, I spent the night there. He said in the middle of the night, in the darkness of the night, somebody knocked at my door. So when I opened the door, I saw a woman, and she was covered head to toe. But I was shocked. And late night, in such a dangerous time, a woman at my door, people would assume the worst. Today people are just waiting to make clips against you, just wait for you to do something, or even if you haven't done it, they just want to wait to find an excuse from the diseases that people have in their hearts. So Abu Qudama, he told her, Ya Amat Allah, oh slave woman of Allah, when you say Abdullah for a man, Amma for a woman, Ya Amat Allah, what are you doing? What are you doing at this time in the night? She just handed him a piece of paper that was wrapped. He said, when I opened it, she had written that I heard what you were saying. I heard what you were saying about those that want to defend the lands of Islam. There's those that would stand up for the sake of Allah and sacrifice for the sake of Allah. And I couldn't bear that I heard the words of Allah and the words of the Rasul ﷺ and I don't act upon it. Imagine. Today our hearts are dead. Today look at us. She said, she said, but my husband is shaheed. In some of the narrations, even her father, but at least Ibn al-Jawzi, he mentions that her husband had already died fi sabilillah in qital. So imagine a woman, her husband's already, she could have said, you know what, my father's not here, my husband's dead, what do you want me to do? Today our bank accounts are nice and full. Our houses are fine. But even when it comes to something light, like giving $1 for the sake of Allah, he gave last month. What more do you want? Huh? I'm already fasting. Tell somebody, don't smoke outside. Brother, I fasted. Well, that means it's okay for you now to go smoke? Don't look at that which is haram. Brother, I'm fasting. Yeah, exactly. So why are you looking at those things? So this woman, she didn't just make an excuse. Okay, my husband's dead, my father's not there. She said, I have a son, but he's young. But she said, I could not bear that I hear that the ummah is in need. I hear the words of the Quran and I don't do anything, so I've cut off my hair. Not because she wanted to look fashionable, not because that was a trend. The hair was the beauty of the woman. At the time, the woman, she was only thought beautiful when she would have long hair. So when she cut off her locks, she gave that up. And she said, I don't have anything else to give. If I had money, I would give. If I had anything else, I would give. My husband's already shaheed fi sabilillah, inshaAllah. But I can give this. So maybe you can make the reins for the horse in jihad. Maybe you can use this or give it to somebody else. And in one of the later narrations of the story, it even says that I put dust in it. So it doesn't look like it's something for beauty, rather it's something for use. She gave that up for the sake of Allah. He said, I was shocked by the sacrifice of this woman. And she said, I have a young son, but he's young. I hope that you will take him. Abu Qudama said, we don't take young kids. We don't take young kids. They were not warlords. They didn't just want to fill up their ranks. No. In Islam we have usul. We have principles. So when he set off the next day, he said, a young man came riding with his face covered behind me. He said, Ya Abu Qudama, Ya Abu Qudama, where are you going? I want to go with you. He told the young man, take off your, they would take the imama and they would put the tarf al-imama, the side of the imama for the dust. He said, show me your face. If you're old enough, we'll take you. If not, we won't. From the wording, the ulama have suggested that he was in his mid-teens, around 15. So he was a young man. Abu Qudama says, when I saw him, he was so handsome, like the bright moon, radiant. And I told him, you're young. Do you have a father? He said, no, my father died. He told him, do you have a mother? He said, yes. He said, go and serve your mother. He said, my mother is the one that sent me. He told him, you're too young, you're skinny, you're small, you're going to be a liability to us. He said, wallahi, you will see that I will not be. He told him, we'll take you, but just for us to cook and to help with the jama'ah, to help with the group. And when the battle starts, I want you in the back. He told him, you take me inshallah and you will see. So he said, we took him, and when we went out to the battlefield, now this is the time of fear. When you see the enemy ranks and you see them outnumbered. If you look at the history of Islam, you look at the Crusaders, you look at the Tatar, it was always the Muslims were outnumbered. You look at Badr, and you look at Tariq, you look at Khalid bin Walid and his battles against the Persians and Romans. So when you see that big rank of those that are better equipped there to kill you, to attack your lands, it's a time when people become afraid. They start coming up with excuses. I have a headache. Said, hey brother, you fasting? No brother, I have a headache. I'm like, brother, we all have headaches. Doesn't mean you have a headache, you don't fast. Achoo, I'm sick. Whoa, got an excuse. Brother, I'm traveling. Where are you going? 2 miles down the street. And these are the excuses we make to ourselves, as if Allah doesn't know our hearts, as if Allah doesn't know our niyyah. Brother, I'll go for Hajj. What do you, brother? You got money, you got cars, you got houses. Why don't you go for Hajj? Brother, when my daughters get married and their granddaughters get married, and once all that is done, then I'll go for Hajj. Brother, you're going to be in the grave. You had money to go to Paris for vacation, you don't have money for Hajj? Allahu musta'an. So this young man, he goes with Abu Qudama, and at the time, this is important, they were fasting in jihad, in qital. They were fasting. So they told the young man that you go and cook. So the young man went and he started to cook. Abu Qudama noticed after a while there's no news of the young man. So he went to look for him, and he found him. And he found the pot that he was cooking, and he found that he had fallen asleep. Abu Qudama says, this young man used to pray in the nights. He used to be dedicated to the Quran. He used to be dedicated to al-qiyam, yani to praying, the late night salah. So he was tired, he fell asleep. Abu Qudama, yani he didn't get upset. What are you doing? You asleep? No. He just started to cook, and he didn't wake up the young man. But he noticed the young man was smiling. And then as he continued to dream, he smiled wider. Abu Qudama, he woke him up, even though not on purpose. Yani he didn't wake him up like, hey, wake up. But as he was cooking, it woke him up. The young man, he became afraid that Abu Qudama would be upset. He told him, I'm sorry, forgive me. He told him, no, it's okay. He told him, let me cook. He told him, no. Abu Qudama said, no, it's okay, I'll cook. He says, Wallah, let me cook. He told him, okay, I'll let you cook, but just tell me, what were you dreaming about? He says, leave that a secret between me and Allah. Leave that a secret between me and Allah. He told him, no, by Allah, tell me. The young man told him, I saw the day of judgment, and I saw one of the people of Jannah taking me, a servant from Jannah taking me to a castle that was bright and shiny, lit up. Said, I saw that I was entering this castle with beautiful rooms, bright. And I saw women in there, and men, those that were there, his servants from the Malaika and others that were there to serve him. And then they told him, Mardiyah, a particular wife for him in Jannah is waiting for him. He said, I saw her, and she was so beautiful that the beauty of the sun cannot compare. He said, if I was not dreaming, I would have died from it. And she said, I'm your wife. So he went for her. Young man, never been married, young. And she told him, not yet. He said, our iftar will be tomorrow. You will break your fast with me tomorrow. He said, this is when I woke up. So Abu Qudama, he told him, okay, but remember, when the battle starts, stay in the back. As the battle began, he told Abu Qudama, give me 3 arrows. I ask you for 3 arrows. He told him, what will you do with them? He said, I will fight fi sabilillah with them. He said, I gave him 3 arrows. He said, he shot one, he hit somebody. He shot the other, he shot the third. I thought he would ask me for more, but he didn't. Instead, he took his sword and went to the front. Abu Qudama said, I told him that you're supposed to be in the back. He told him, don't you know that Allah says when you meet the enemy, don't turn your backs? He said, my mother told me. My mother told me when you see the enemy, I don't want to see cuts on your back. I want to see them on your chest. So he ran into the thick of the battle. Young men sitting here think, what are you doing with your life? If you can't give up music, if you can't give up TV, if you can't give up Netflix, if you can't give up other ills online, if you can't give up chatting in haram, if you can't give that up, how will you stand in front of Allah when that young man is standing in front of Allah? You think he couldn't have lived up his life? No, he ran into that thick of the battle. Abu Qudama says, when the dust came, I couldn't see where he was. The dust from the ghubar of the battle. The one that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that the one that if it touches your body, the nar is haram on you. He says, I couldn't see this young man anymore. And the battle settled. I went and I saw kuffar. The enemies were dropped and a trail of the kuffar. And then at the end of it, I saw the young man, bloodied, dusty, at the point of death. Said, I went to him and I told him, oh young man, what did you do to yourself? I told you stay in the back. He says, no, I fulfilled my promise with Allah. I fulfilled my promise with my mother. And he was repeating the words of his mother, that don't let your back be turned to the enemy. And he said, I saw the cuts from the swords and arrows all on the front of his body. And he was smiling. At that point of death, at that point of pain, he was smiling. Abu Qudama started to wipe the blood from him. He told him, leave it. He told him, I have Mardiya here waiting for me. Mardiya, the woman from Jannah that Allah had assigned for him, his wife in Jannah, was waiting for him. These are the people of success. He said, take my thawb back to my mother with the blood that's on it, and tell her that Allah has accepted your sadaqah. That Allah has accepted your sadaqah. This is a mother. She has feelings. This is a child. He has feelings. He said, I have a sister. I have a young sister. She'll be looking for me. But don't tell her. Just tell her your brother will meet you soon, inshallah. These are human beings as well. What happened to us? Abu Qudama said, I went back to Raqqa. I saw a young girl running, a little girl, with everybody coming back asking, are you coming back from the front lines? Do you have my brother? Do you know my brother? These are the people that were true to their promises with Allah. He said, I saw the young woman, the young girl. I told her, your brother will see you soon, inshallah. He said, I went to his house. I went to the mother. And I told her, Allah has accepted your sadaqah. Allah has accepted your gift. And I realized that this was the same woman. This was the same woman that cut off her locks and brought them for us. She told me, I don't believe you. Are you a bringer of glad tidings? Or are you a bringer of grievances? He said, what would be the glad tiding for you? He said, the glad tiding would be that if truly Allah has accepted my son as a shaheed. Today if our son goes to the masjid, our daughter goes to a Quran dars, we're worried. Oh, what if people think you're hardcore? People will label you. Don't go to that masjid. Now that Shaykh. Look at us today. The shame, the dhillah that we are in today. That woman, what was her happiness? Even though her father had died, her husband had become shaheed fi sabilillah, was that even her son be accepted young, 15-year-old. He sacrificed that for the sake of Allah. He sacrificed, she sacrificed. Wallahi, they're successful. Those that do it mukhlisan lillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, wallahi, this dunya is nothing for them. When he gave her that shirt, with the blood of her son, she started to cry. Not out of huzn, but out of thanking Allah that Allah accepted. And this is the ummah that defeated the Tatar. This is the ummah that broke the backs of the crusaders. This is the ummah that stood to lead the world. This is the ummah that Allah gave that izzah to in this month of Ramadan. Today, that ummah is calling out to us. Where are you today? Where are those? Nobody's asking you today to cut off your hair and give up everything you have and go. No. Just stand on the Quran and the Sunnah. Stand on the Aqeedah of the Salaf al-Ummah. Stand proud that you are Muslim. Stand proud that this is the Quran and this is the way of Islam and this is the month of Ramadan. Don't be ashamed of who you are. Be with your community, stand together. Don't say that the way of success is for us to follow the Jews and Christians. Don't say the way of success is to shave the beards and leave the niqab and the hijab and the abaya. Don't think that leaving that which the Salaf were upon will bring you success, because Tariq has taught us that brought us nothing but dhillah. At least say that I'm going to stand on the Quran and Sunnah. At least say that I'm not worried about being cancelled. At least say that I'm not worried about death. I'm not worried about labels. I'm not worried about what anybody says or does or any plots. I will stand with my ai and ulama. I will stand with the Quran and the Sunnah, and I will die on it. Today those words are even difficult to come out of our mouth. But I ask Allah to make this month of Ramadan a reset point for us, that from this month of Ramadan we will give up our bad habits ourselves. We will change ourselves. We will go back to the Quran. We will go back to the Sunnah. We will leave that sin that we know in our hearts is a sin. Not because somebody sees us, but because Allah sees us. We will use this fast to get taqwa as Allah has ordained for us. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله.